It's the only plastic that doesn't seep. And almost the only material that doesn't seep. So all the way through this new book, you'll see this kind of plastic being touted, and maybe as long as I'm giving away some secrets, I'll give away another secret. You get fat. I'm taking a break from the subject matter, you understand. I better take my drink of water, too. We're in the middle of a new breakthrough, which isn't in the book, but that's what you come to these conferences for. Something quite unexpected and miraculous happens when you take the chlorine out of your body. It doesn't matter whether it's good chlorine or bad chlorine. What matters is that you're not getting chlorination anymore. You see, all your food is chlorinated. Every bite you take is chlorinated because it's made with water that's chlorinated. The oscillator picks up on it very easily. You can tell what kind of chlorination was used in the water that they used to bake the biscuits or whatever they cooked. And everything you eat has chlorination. And we are trying now, we started maybe half a year ago, taking the chlorination out of the water for the people who are trying to improve their health. And we saw a fantastic improvement that I didn't want to accept at first, but it was fantastic. It particularly helped the people that were sickest because I suppose that's where you could see even the smallest change. If you're pretty healthy, you're not going to see changes. But in the people who are extremely ill, with only a week or two left, if you make some significant change, you'll see it. And after seeing that, I thought, well, let's try going all the way and removing the chlorine from their food, which is much more difficult. Trying to find unchlorinated food is about impossible in the marketplace. Even all the fresh vegetables and fruit have been sprayed with water that is chlorinated. Now, I've just been to Europe, to Switzerland, and found a place where you can have non-chlorinated water. So I'm going to pursue that for a while, see if this all really remains true a year from now, and then I'll talk about it. It has to stay true for a year before it's really worth talking about. And I'm very hopeful, though. We did not know that we were affecting our body's chemistry so intensely. We always thought, well, a little chlorine, you have to disinfect the water somehow, and a little chlorine isn't going to bother you. People get to 80, 90 years old on that. Yes, some do. But this miracle remains very obvious. Something that obvious would be easy to do an experiment on. So if you want to do that experiment, you could, but you would have to choose a problem that you can easily see on yourself and change your water. Now, how to find unchlorinated water is with a chlorine tester. So you go to a Home Depot, do you have those here? Okay, and get a chlorine tester. There are quite a few of them in the market, and I understand there's even an electronic one now, which I haven't used yet, but we can compare chlorine testers next year. Okay, and I would be interested in communicating with anybody else who is trying to find out what the results are. We're getting fantastic results. We have to find food that isn't chlorinated and not eat anything that is. That's the only rule. And so far we're finding a couple of kinds of bottled water, several kinds of bottled water, and there's hardly any place that doesn't have chlorinated water, so you'd be stuck drinking and cooking with bottled water. It has its disadvantages, but maybe you'll get some tips out of the new book on how to deal with distilled water, which isn't chlorinated. A lot of distilled water is chlorinated, and the chlorination comes from in other ways too, in bottled water. But some distilled water does not have chlorination. Some mineral water, which happens to be what I'm drinking right now, isn't chlorinated, and the benefits are quite obvious. So that gives away the latest secret, and I'm happy that you're interested. I would like to maybe make a question and answer time period about the lecture. It's a difficult subject, and if you have questions, I guess we all have 100 questions, we just don't know how to state them. Yes?
We need people to use the microphone.
Yes.
We want all questions to go through the mic, so they end up on the tape.
I had a question about both in terms of your geometabolism and your research into polarization.
Yes.
Have you used animals or animal tissue? Do they give the same results that you've had with humans and human tissue?
Yes, I have. I've had cats, dogs, mostly, and there is a chapter on that in the new book called on Pets. Also, you can use the oscillator to be testing any piece of tissue from the meat market. You can have liver, muscle, bone, etc., bone marrow, and you can measure it on those, and they're, well, I never did that exactly on purchased meats. I don't remember. If you used a sample of bone marrow that you got from the market or off a slide, it would be giving you an identification of your own bone marrow. You wouldn't be getting the polarization of what was on the slide. At least it would be too confusing to give that much validity. So I think I can't answer that question.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done for all of us. And second of all, I would like to know if you're familiar with the books that are out called Eat Right for Your Blood Type, where they talk about eating particular foods for your particular blood type. And I was just wondering if you are familiar with that, if you could tell us what your thoughts might be about it.
No, I'm not familiar enough to talk about it, but there are a number of booklets on magnetics and this whole field of investigation that go back about 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and maybe long before then, when they were beginning to see that magnets had an influence on healing. And they were not necessarily PhDs, but phenomena don't have to come from PhDs. They come more readily from hobbyists who are totally devoted to their hobby, which is this science. And so you can find them, I think, in any company that sells magnets and such devices. Rawls rings a bell, R-A-W-L-S, Rawls, and they did some very pioneering work In fact, I think that first piqued my interest in this. He said he was going to go fishing and got a can of worms to go fishing with, two cartons, and left them on his workbench while he had supper, or till the next day, forgot to refrigerate them or something. And when he came back, one container was all eaten up and the worms were out, and the other one was behaving okay, and it happened to be right close to a horseshoe magnet, or rather, they were rather big in those days, great big horseshoe magnets. One was in front of the south and the other one was in front of the north pole, and he thought, my goodness, does it have anything to do with this? It certainly seemed like an abnormal phenomenon. So he repeated it, and that's the making of a good scientist, right? The hobbyist type. And he got the same result. So he thought, what a shocker, because all scientists have been doing experiments on putting living things in a magnetic field. It's just that they always put it in between a north and a south pole. To them, a magnetic field is between a north and a south pole, and they do it like that. Here's the north and south pole. They put the experiment in here, and of course, you're getting something entirely different. You're getting the impact of the North Pole and the impact of the South Pole, often quite opposite to each other, and you can't see results. And he said, the influence of the North Pole is entirely different from the influence of the South Pole. And that was a stroke of genius to my mind. So I've been observing that all along, and as you know, if we put a North Pole over the spine, you affect the DNA one way, you put a South Pole on, and the opposite is the result. Any more questions?
One thing I wanted to mention about your earlier talk, it just occurred to me that years ago, a scientist who was thrown in jail and died there, Wilhelm Reich, did some studies, most of which he's famous for. But he did some studies on the body, and he found that the mineral content in the body, the metals, worked like they created an electromagnetic motor, which was what gave you electricity in the body. And he found that people that lived in different areas of the North to South Pole, since they got a different amount of sunlight, or a different timing of sunlight, it kind of regulated a clock for them. I don't know if
Can you find more on that?
Well, I've probably read the book 15, 20 years ago, but
Think it up.
it's, I'll figure it out.
All right.
He's got a dozen different books, and they're very difficult to find.
And is this, did you say Wilhelm Reich?
Wilhelm Reich, yes.
Okay. Find it. I'd like to read that. It's now making a lot more sense to me than it did before I had this rather, definitive proof.
He even went so far as to determine that people in one area of a country or a region that developed different foods, they had different eating habits, mined their soil different, got different minerals in their system than the country next to them. And that created a difference in what he called the fulfillment of their life process. And because the two people became to have different mineral content, it changed their attitudes about their fellow countrymen, and it created actually warfare.
Well, minerals and metals are certainly in the field of magnetism, certainly would be involved. So I'd like to learn more about that.
I'll give you some on it.
Thanks.
Have you come up with any practical or basic ideas about the use of magnets? The Nikon mattress pads and the
Yes.
and the pain things and all that sort of thing.
Yes, I've come to the conclusion that we have to be very careful and not just buy magnetic things helter-skelter, not knowing what field we're in. Even though we change from north to south and back from day to night, nevertheless, this is a profound influence, and we need to pay attention to it. I also think that we seem to have a shortage of the North Pole. I'm not sure, but the flares from the sun seem to be giving us a South Pole effect without any matching North Pole. Maybe that's important. Maybe DNA expression is speeding up on account of more South Polarization. Maybe not. Maybe, but I have a feeling at this point that we're not getting enough North Polarization, or that we're getting too much South Polarization. And in the book I elaborate on that a little bit. I'll let you know that all the living stuff that I tested, like fruit and vegetables, when you pick them, they're North Polarized. They resonate with the North Pole water. And as soon as they start getting wilted, which might be a day or 2 or 4 or 5, grapes take around 4 or 5 days, they turn south. Why don't they just stay where they're at and shrivel up or something? They don't. They turn south.
So we're all wilting.
Pardon?
We're all wilting.
We're all wilting, yes. And it seems to me that our switch over to civilized practices has given us much more South influence. I think we're eating South food, drinking South water, and altogether getting way too much South effect. And we should be eating fresh food, even though it's been kept fresh for you artificially. I haven't done enough of those experiments, but I don't think that it preserves the polarization. I haven't done enough of that, but I think we should be much more interested in the magnetic fields around us, and we should be measuring them in our homes and seeing to it that we're not in too much of a south field, not even at night, because it just isn't our ancestral environment. And then there, of course, comes a whole field of alternating magnetic fields, which we are introducing ourselves through our devices and equipment that we all have. And that's a whole different area. I've just been talking about the static field that's all around us from the earth, and everything picks up a little bit of the static field. If you get one of these magnetometers and you go around your desk and chair, everything's magnetized. Quite a bit, more than the Earth's field, quite often more than a Gauss. The metal chair you're sitting in, it has different strengths of magnetic field. Metal needs more respect. Our beds. Any more questions?
Yes, Dr. Clark. I was interested if you did any studies or any work on geopathic radiation.
Tell me just what you mean before I say no.
Well, I'm thinking of Hartmann rays and Lee rays, and also straight geopathic radiation, which emanates from the Earth.
Okay, I don't know what those two terms mean, but maybe you could simplify that for me. Maybe I do know some of it.
Okay, it's my understanding, and you can douse for these, that there was a German scientist by the name of Hartmann who discovered that the voids and the metals inside the Earth create radiation, which goes up to maybe 10,000 feet. And this radiation is harmful to the body. Now, if I remember right, it's about 6.2 feet between each ray of the Hartmann, and it's something like 8 feet or something fraction for the Lee rays, which come the opposite direction. And I think they go...
Is it magnetic field?
No, it isn't. I think they go from north to south and also from west
I
to
don't mean,
east.
yes, but it is magnetic field, although not the Earth's magnetic field, right?
No, it comes from the Earth.
Yes, but not part of the 1 Gauss or so.
No.
No, I'm not familiar with it. I'd like to be.
Okay. Well, I thought this might tie in with your talk today,
Yes.
because I understand these are very damaging, or can be very damaging to the human body, where these rays cross, especially if it's over your bed, where a nodal point might be, that people have gotten cancer at that exact point on their body.
Yes, I have heard about that, but don't know anything about it. I also thought that they were coming from maybe running water streams under in the Earth. But that's just included and not the actual source, is that right?
Right.
Well, I'd like to learn more about that. That might be very relevant to what I'm finding.
Okay, thank you.
Multiple vortex.
Dr. Clark,
Yes.
the experimentation you were just mentioning about the fellow with the worms, his name was Dr. Albert Roy Davis?
Yes, Davis and Rawls, yes.
Right. And did you read the part about how the magnetic, his theory that there were 2 separate fields, they weren't integrated?
Yes, I have read that. I've just never seen any proof of it. I just have never seen it. So it stands out in my memory clearly.
Their foundation in Florida did the experimentation where they did it with like animals, little
Yes.
chicks and stuff like that, and they documented the difference in the fields and the effects.
Okay, I don't remember that part, but they were saying that the North Pole of the Earth ends at the equator.
Correct.
And makes it like a big figure 8 instead of one large loop.
Correct.
And I've never seen any evidence of that, and I didn't know how to get evidence either. But you're saying that they provided evidence with animals?
Sure. They found that the North Pole field would create in little chicks, for example. They would be sort of scrawny, but they'd be smarter than the others, and they would live longer. And the South Pole treated critters would have robust physiology, and they would be cannibalistic and aggressive, but they'd be stupid and they didn't live very long. So,
Which book does he have that in?
it's called Micromagnetism in the Living Organism.
Say that again, because I think those little books are quite easy reading, and it would stimulate your imagination.
Well, it's Micromagnetism in the Living Organism by Dr. Albert Roy Davis.
Micromagnetism in the living organism?
Right.
Okay. It's not too hard.
I'm wondering if you've taken a look at magnetic field changes over time. For example, they say that there's some evidence that we're going to lose most of the magnetic field in about 1,000 years and come back probably in 2,000 years after that. But there supposedly have been polar shifts where the poles reverse every 200,000 years or so. Have you looked at any fossil data that indicate if there's a change every time that happens in mutation rates of species and so forth? Would something like that support some of the ideas that you're talking about today?
I think that is a fascinating subject, but I didn't know that mutation rates were changing.
Well, I'm not sure that they are. I'm just wondering if anyone's looked for it.
I don't think anybody has. I haven't come across the concept, but It does worry me some that there is some evidence for the magnetic field getting less and less. Maybe what they mean is the north magnetic field getting less and less, but often when I read those things, they don't specify. They're not measuring it that way, and so I'm left at a loss. It would be consistent with what I'm seeing, namely that we're getting pelted with south pole fields. Although I've never watched any blips at night, I've never seen them on a cloudy day, so I never thought that I'd see them in the middle of the night. But there's a lot of radioactivity certainly in the night, a lot better. And there might be some effects maybe that are coming on the aurora borealis, and maybe that too has an effect on DNA. But somebody working in northern Canada could do this very well. People here from Alaska, they could do these experiments. You could have the light on, wouldn't have to be dark. Just a night when there was a brilliant aurora borealis, and pick up on it with this electromagnetic. This only costs a couple of $100, incidentally, so it's quite doable in terms of research cost. And see whether the DNA is maybe pushed in the other direction. Wow, that would make me happy. Then we'd only have to take our vacations in the north, north of the North, way up there near the North Pole. And then we could get our rejuvenation, right? That would be very interesting to do. Thank you for that contribution.
Dr. Clark, just
Yes.
along with that, one of the things that I've had a slight interest in over the years has been the magnetic North Pole. And I happened to look it up on the internet the other day because I've noticed in talking with pilots that the magnetic maps for landing fields have been shifting. They have to reprint the maps about every 6 months because the magnetic pole seems to be moving.
Yes.
And I looked it up and I noticed that if you go on the internet and you look for the magnetic North Pole shift over the last 25 years, you'll find a map. And the map shows that about 19